DeSanto Propane is 4 generations strong as a trustworthy, family-owned business with unmatched customer service. Go online at DeSantoPropane.com for more info or call toll-free at 1-800-752-4574 today. Since 1937, the difference has been DeSanto Propane.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to Against the Boards. I'm Chamberlain Bauder here with you for another week as the Amerks close out a homestand and the Knighthawks get ready to head back home. It should be a good week in all of Rochester sports altogether, but definitely when it comes to the ice side of things. And that's where we're going to start here today. The Rochester Americans, of course, we got to keep milking it. They're the top of the AHL, and it's actually not close now. They have a point of separation with the game that they have played extra over the next 2 teams in second and third place. The Laval Rocket are 3 points behind Rochester right now, so even if they win, they still can't tie in points. And meanwhile, for the Hershey Bears, they're 2 games behind Rochester and 5 points behind the Americans. So altogether, comfort at the top of things and making things a little bit more interesting as well as time goes on. Devon Levi, recently the AHL Player of the Week after a tough weekend 2 weeks ago. We talked about it last week, being pulled out of that game against the Laval Rocket, having a tough go against the Syracuse Crunch on that Friday. He then completely bounces back into a 4-0 week for the Amerks that, when we talk about the homestand, it's technically a 4-1 homestand. I don't even include that Laval game in their last set of games because that was part of that 3-3. I don't see it as a part of a 5-game homestand. I see it as the end to their 3 games in 3 days, and then on Wednesday last week, they restarted a 4-game homestand. At least that's the best way you could probably think about it if you want to be a high hopes Amerks fan. Devon Levi, of course, at the center of so much of that. Like we said, a tough weekend coming into that Laval game, getting pulled in the second period. Ultimately, over his last 85 minutes of hockey leading up to that point, he had given up about a goal every 10 minutes. And then you turn things into the homestand week, and he went over 125 minutes without giving up a goal. Completely flip things on its head, and I think the best way to hear about it will be from him. In the press conference last night, he talked a little bit about what it was like getting pulled and bouncing back from that, but also what it's like playing on this team right now. And I think it answers a question that I had, which was, how do the Amerks be better right now than they were in past seasons and still find a way to play playoff hockey down this closing stretch of the regular season? And Devon Levi actually perfectly sums that up.
You know, I never want to be taken out of the game. You know, I like going to war with the guys. And yeah, you know, when something like that happens, it's how you respond. It's how you solve the problem. That's the most important. So, you know, kind of digesting that game, moving past it, using it as a little bit of fuel in the next few. And, you know, the highs and the lows are all a part of hockey, and you wouldn't have the highs without the lows. So it's important to, you know, accept them and use them.
I mean, how do you describe the last 3 starts you've had?
I guess, you know, I try to look at them like any other. You know, try not to look at the outcome of the game, more about the process. And I felt like my process has been good. Just, you know, learning over the course of, you know, however many games I've played this year, getting a little bit more experience and putting that in, you know, looking at my journal, seeing what works, what doesn't work, kind of trying to formulate a plan that makes me me. And, you know, it's still in works. You know, I wouldn't say I'm there yet. But, you know, I think as a team, we've been playing really well. Full 60-minute games. Our starts have been unbelievable. Especially today. You know, it's tough to come back from 3-0. So as a team, I think that we could be any team on any given night, and I'm pretty proud of the group, and we're looking to build that and try to keep that consistent moving forward.
Talk so much about the team, not you, the team. When's the last time you've been a part of a team that is as talented as this group is?
Yeah, I think this is as talented as a team I've been on. I think all 4 lines are able to score and generate offense differently, which is hard to play against. There's no really matching that other teams could do because it frees up somebody else, and everybody on our team feels like they bring a crucial part. So it's been pretty special so far. Yeah, I think it's a good thing. You want everyone's best on any given night. I think it's important to go into games knowing that it's going to be a battle, it's going to be a war, because that's what playoff hockey is. And we're ready for that. We expect to get other teams' best. We expect Wilkes to bounce back and try to come back into the game after the first period. So I think it's good for the young guys. It's good for everyone. It's good for the team going into this final stretch this season. Past few games have felt like playoff hockey, so it's a good little challenge for us.
Playing pretty well with that target on their back right now, I'd have to say. They are definitely playing that playoff hockey. A 4-0 win over Cleveland last week on Wednesday. That was right before our episode last week. And then over the weekend in the 3 games up to Wednesday yesterday, a 6-3 win over Belleville, a 1-0 shootout win over Toronto, and the 5-2 win over the Penguins. Now, you look through all of these games, and something that we talked about with Coach Leo earlier on in the season was playing that boring hockey and that being something that this team wants. Ultimately, when I see the way this team has played this year, their threshold is 4 goals. Leo ideally wants that to be about 3, which would make sense. But when push comes to shove, if you can score 4 goals and force every other team that you're playing against to not score 4 goals, you're going to come away with a win more times than not. And obviously, that's what comes out of the Belleville game. When you look at that Wilkes-Barre game, though, it was a 3-0 first period from the Amerks. They came out and immediately put the blitz on the Penguins, really, when push comes to shove. That's why you hear Levi there talking about it's really hard to come back from being down 3-0. And don't get it twisted. Wilkes-Barre-Scranton tried. Second period, they get a goal. Second period, they start a fight with Graham Slaggert, try to build some momentum. But ultimately, in the third, the Amerks know how to respond to it, score the first goal of the third, and then get an empty netter on the end for Isaac Roseyan. So ultimately, when push comes to shove, this team is just a well-oiled machine at this point. You also heard from Levi there talking about how this team can roll 4 lines and any of those lines can score. And that's the next point that we'll talk about a little bit more here with the Amerks. So obviously, Nicholas Aube-Kubel came down to Rochester about a month ago now, and he wasn't too excited about the prospect of coming down initially. Now, after that first game, he immediately talked about how nice it was to actually win. And when you're now sitting on an organization that has been eliminated from the NHL playoffs, there's really no reason for this Amerks team to only get better personnel-wise as time is going to go on down this stretch of the season, and for them to be one of the best teams in the AHL. It is really a talented roster that almost gives you one of those night and day viewpoints from the NHL team to the AHL team. But it will be interesting to see if a Yuri Kulik gets sent down maybe to play through the AHL season. I honestly almost think that it would be ignorant not to look through the entire Sabres roster and send every 2-way contract back down to Rochester right now. It just seems like the smart thing to do. However, it's not something that this team has ever done. We look to years past, and the only time they've ever sent someone down for the AHL playoffs was, I believe, Jack Quinn going back down after a random stint up with the Sabres. They don't like taking players that they've made Sabres and sending them back down to the AHL to play in the playoffs. However, you may view that opinion. That's usually how the Sabres operate. Unfortunately. I'm saying unfortunately, because let's be honest, there's no reason not to send as many of those players from the Sabres that have the ability to play in the AHL right now. There's no reason not to send them down at all. Except for the fact that maybe, the Amerks are kind of cooking right now, so there's not really any reason to change what's going on. But it never hurts to have a little bit more goal scoring in the AHL. Next game for the Amerks will be against the Utica Comets this Friday, and the interesting note to me to see for this team will be how lines continue to shape up. As time has gone on, we've seen lines change time and time again for this team, and right now, as we're trying to get to it, try to pull up our line charts from the last couple of games for you to go through, but one of the most interesting points to me, at least, is that for the last 3 games in a row now, Konsta Helenius and Nicholas Aube-Kubel have been on the same line. Now, they've been on the third line, but as we've brought up multiple times now on this show, the number of that line does not matter. They all end up usually getting the same sort of rotation and the same sort of minutes. But last night, it was that third line. They had Jagger Joshua as their wing. That was thanks to an injury to Brett Murray. Out of the lineup, Riley Fiddler-Schultz moves up to first-line winger, and Jagger Joshua slots in as the other winger with Helenius and Kubel. But, as we were saying, over the weekend against Belleville and Toronto, those two were paired up, and then this week on Wednesday, they were paired up as well. They weren't, or actually they were also together on Wednesday before that. They've been kind of putting together that chemistry as time has gone on, and that's something that Aube-Kubel talked about when he first got to Rochester, was playing time with Konsta Helenius and being able to help a young player grow. Talked a little bit about that last night in the press conference.
He's a really talented kid. Super young, so I'm always trying to, give him feedback, help him out a little bit, joke around, make him comfortable. When I was playing my first year at 20 years old, I had so much to learn. So I think he's way ahead. I was at 20, so I think it's really good to. It's also such a different style of play than where he was in Finland and Europe. Finland, yeah. So it's such a different type of game. So I always remind him on the bench, make quick plays and move your feet. So I think he's doing a great job.
The Amerks are 4-0 in their last 4 games, and in all of those games, Nicholas Aube-Kubel and Konsta Helenius have been on a line together. Of course, last night, Aube-Kubel coming up with a goal and an assist on his goal, technically assisted by Devon Levi with a great blocker save to put the puck out of his crease that then just kind of floated perfectly forward and got the secondary assist for him on Aube-Kubel's goal. The third assist of the year for Devon Levi. Pretty awesome numbers there when your goalie can create like that. And it just shows not only that your goalie can turn his saves into offensive performances, but that the team's momentum understands that saves can be converted into offensive chances. That's basically how the Amerks have operated all year. They have scored at will, it seems like, and they've been stopping teams at a higher clip than stopping teams more than they are putting the puck in the goal. So all in all, an impressive season to say the least for the Amerks so far. And as we get into this March segment of the season, when things really start to ramp up before the playoffs, they are playing playoff hockey. And that was the question that we had for this Amerks team that was going into this period of time, was would they be prepared for the more intense hockey when they're at the top of everything? And it seems like they are. And that's going to do it for us on our Amerks talk this week. Like we said, this Friday on the road, they will be taking on the Utica Comets. And Wednesday was the end of that homestand. Meanwhile, for the Rochester Knighthawks, they will head home tomorrow, taking on the Albany Firewolves. But before we can get into that Firewolves game, there's going to be a couple of things we have to talk about with this Calgary game. First things first, the Knighthawks pull out the road win 15-10. And there's a couple of key points to this one. First things first, let's talk about the elephant in the room with this game, which to me was Rylan Hartley. Of course, 42 saves and 83%, almost 83% save percentage. Only 9 goals against for Hartley in that game. He balled out. Now, he did go down with a non-contact injury with about 9.5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. He did come back in and play. I'm getting a little bit concerned whenever I watch him go down because this is already in 3 games, the second time where something's been pulled. So probably a conversation there for the staff on how you keep him in less of a situation where he can hurt himself, which is a very vague way of me saying ultimately maybe he needs to figure out when those times are that he needs to jump and dive and go into crazy positions. Also, though, it really does seem like both of those situations where the non-contact injuries have occurred have been a guy driving on the crease, forcing him back into his goal while he's already trying to get low, and then it just gets him into a weird knee-bending position. Yeah, that has now happened twice. It happened against Philly. It happened against Calgary. So ultimately, it's something to keep an eye on, but Hartley is the kind of guy that's just going to keep playing when push comes to shove. If he can play hurt, he will. It's something that's really been coming up a lot more in the conversations of world sports lately with hockey and basketball, and now you bring that lacrosse conversation into it. It fits right in with hockey. Guys do play hurt. The question is, how hurt should you be playing to make sure that you're not going to re-aggravate anything? And I don't think that Hartley is at a point where he is going to re-aggravate anything. I'm just acknowledging the elephant in the room that is, in 2 of the last 3 games, he has had to leave the floor with a non-contact injury. He does come back in right after usually, but it's still something to take note of and keep an eye on as the season goes on. But when it comes to his goalie performance, 100% a bounce back last week with 42 saves versus the 18 that he had the week before against Saskatchewan. Much needed performance in goal. The other area where the performance was much needed was the shot efficiency. And there's no doubt at all that in the first half, these Knighthawks were absolutely dialed. On 25 shots, they had 10 goals in the first half of the game. I mean, if you're getting a goalie benched, you're usually doing something right. Cam McLeod goes out in the second quarter of this game just solely due to the efficiency of Rochester's shots. It was a first shot of the game, first goal for Ryan Smith. It was within 3-4 possessions. This team already had 2 goals on the board and was clearly in the driver's seat. It was honestly outrageously impressive for the fact that Mike Sisselberger also then only went 9 for 27 at the faceoff dot. Just defeating the odds in more ways than one, this Knighthawks team in this game. Obviously, can't talk about this game without talking about the offensive forwards. The lefties specifically, Thomas McConvey and Connor Fields, were doing it all. McConvey ended with 5 goals and 2 assists. Connor Fields ended with 2 goals and 7 assists. I was about to say 9. He ended with 9 points total on the day. And the last point for me when I talk about this Calgary game goes back to what we asked Coach Hazen about last week, which was how directly of an impact will Jesse King and his assisting have on the success of the Calgary Roughnecks in this game? Well, a goal and 2 assists for this team's normally leading point scorer will have that effect. That was exactly how they needed to defend that team. Curtis Dixon pops off for 4 and 5, but he is the only player for Calgary with more than 4 points. That was exactly what they needed to do. Dane Dobbie 1 and 2, Jesse King 1 and 2. And that is how you can snuff out the Calgary Roughnecks offense. Justin Inacio literally went 18 for 27, gave Calgary all the possession opportunities that they could have. But the defense was on hands, Hartley was dialed in, and when the Knighthawks were on offense, they made it count. I mean, they literally scored the game winner of this game in the opening 2 minutes of the third quarter. Like, don't forget that. Do not forget that. The opening goal of this third quarter of the second half was the game winner. Yes, that means they played 28 minutes of defense where they forced Calgary into a situation where they could never come back. And ultimately, it's probably one of the best wins that the Knighthawks have on their resume all season long. I'd definitely put it over the Halifax win for me personally. I'd put it over the Philly win because a lot of teams, it seems like, have pulled out wins now against this Wings squad. I'd put it up there for one of the best wins of the season for the Knighthawks, no question. And now, tomorrow, they get to play a team that had arguably a tougher schedule than the Knighthawks so far this season. The Albany Firewolves are obviously a team that was in the NLL championship last year. And then this year, they add Dyson Williams to the squad, and he gets to join the leading point efforts of Alex Simmons, Ty Kurtz, and Ethan Walker. All three of them over 45 points so far on the season. But you look at the schedule that they've had to play, and they're only 3-8 right now through 11 games. Their 3 wins came against Toronto, Colorado, and Philly, but their losses are where it's really interesting to me. I'd only probably say that of their 8 losses, 2 of them were games that they, quote-unquote, should have won. That was the 1-goal loss in overtime to Las Vegas, which ultimately it was a Tucker out lymphoma game, so you understand where the emotions are in that one for Vegas to come out with the win. And their loss to Ottawa, which was a much bigger loss, 18-9. Ottawa has had an interesting season, to say the least, I think is probably the best way to put it. But overall, this season includes 1 loss to the Buffalo Bandits, 2 losses to the Saskatchewan Rush, and a loss to the Calgary Roughnecks, and a loss to the Halifax Thunderbirds on the road. I mean, I look through the way that their season has gone, and I think their record does not at all reflect the success and skill level of this team whatsoever. Now, especially, of course, have to keep an eye on Dougie Jamieson, who has had a little bit more so of, taking some time out of the net this season. Not, best goalie of the year performance like he normally puts up. But ultimately, when push comes to shove, he's still Dougie Jamieson, and he's still going to come up with stops. Of course, if you want to look to history, the all-time highest penalty minutes of any Knighthawks game ever was against the Albany Firewolves. That game was in 2021, I want to say, in December. And strong Knighthawks fans will remember Rylan Hartley walking out to the center of the floor and scrapping with, I believe it was Dougie Jamieson in that game. A nice little goalie fight that led to, I think, 72 total minutes for the Knighthawks in that game. Something absolutely outrageous like that. But yeah, don't get it twisted. Definitely some bad blood between these two squads. Likely based off of the other thing that we should be talking about from that Calgary game that I almost forgot about, the fight at the end. What else have we been asking for? It feels like every single week we've been asking for this offense to get respect. And finally in the fourth quarter, Hazen didn't feel like their offense was getting enough respect. So they sent Tyler Biles out there and say, go start something. And that's exactly what he did. And yes, he did get 17 total penalty minutes for an instigator, a 10-minute game misconduct, and a 5-minute fighting. But with 30 seconds left in the game, big whoop. Send Tyler Biles right on into the locker room. Nobody cares. And we just got to see a fight where he absolutely tossed the dude. Sounds like a winning scenario to me. And it also, obviously, it came super late. But it was a situation of don't touch our guys. Don't try to throw a hit now on T-Mac late in the game when we already have the win. Don't try to drop Connor Fields just because you can. We're going to send out 29, and he's going to do something about it if you do try to do that. And that was basically what I feel like I've been asking for since we started the show this year, was for that type of a fight to happen. And it felt so vindicating to watch it go down that way, because it did exactly what they need. It established this team will fight on the O side of the floor, which is just adds another level of thought to defenders on how they approach attacking this offense. So with that, now you go into this game here at home on a Friday night against a team that was in the NLL championship last year, a team with 4 high point producers, and you start to think, all right, turn up the physicality. Hartley has to perform at his best. And they need to find a way now this week, instead of shutting down a lefty feeder, either Kurtz or Simmons needs to be shut down in this game. If that can happen, then the Knighthawks can likely push. But with that said, as we get to our predictions and the last thing on this Knighthawks game, I am a very, very superstitious person. So, based on the way that last week's game went, there's no way that I'm predicting that the Knighthawks win this one. Because if I predict that they lose and then they win, I'm going to keep doing that until things change. Don't you ever get it twisted. I am a super, superstitious man. And I think I got it a lot from Rylan Hartley, if I'm being completely honest with you. But I think for this game, I'll say 12-11 Albany. I think it's going to be a close 1-goal game. I think it'll come down to the fourth quarter, no doubt. But I don't think that it'll go to overtime. I think it's a 1-goal game or a 2-goal thanks to an icing in about the final 30 seconds from the winning team. But we'll keep it riding on the superstition. I'm taking Albany. Don't forget why. But I am going to take Albany. So that game is tomorrow at, let me make sure we got the right time for it, 7 o'clock start for that one tomorrow. Of course, it is Native American Heritage Night. It is also Marvel Night. You might not like the jerseys. I'm not in love with the jerseys. I do think they're kind of cool if you embrace that they're kind of also colored for Black History Month. That's really the only way that I can get around it not being cool that Black Widow is the superhero that the Knighthawks got this season. Yeah, they really do just get shafted every year with who they're going to have on their jersey. And I it's a conversation that could probably happen in an off-season discussion about the NLL and the Marvel unis, but somebody tell me why Halifax and Philly got to play a Deadpool versus Wolverine game in essentially Deadpool costumes and Wolverine costumes, and then the rest of the league is going to wear mediocrely designed jerseys that just have the design of the superhero on the sleeves, unless you're Colorado, who then also got new helmets for them. Yeah, here are the jerseys, and just for anyone confused, yes, that is the Black Widow on the sleeves. They decided to match it with that brightish green, and it looks like a white on the stripes around the red, but that's actually more of a gold on the jerseys. It's just, I don't love it. I mean, honestly, I'll be really completely honest. It looks cool on a body. When you see T-Mac and Rylan Reese modeling with these jerseys on, they do look cool. I think the colors go very well together and everything of that nature. putting the bird on the black shirt is really all you need to do for a Knighthawks fan to like their jerseys, because we all know that the bird is the best front chest logo that you can get for the Knighthawks. But it's just, they could have done more. I mean, they could have done a different superhero. You have the Rochester Knighthawks. Why isn't it a Hawkeye jersey? I mean, there's so many questions that I always have, it seems like, with Marvel. I will say, at least theoretically, obviously we haven't seen the rest of the season shake out, at least the Knighthawks actually got their own design this year, though, instead of being one of multiple teams with a Guardians of the Galaxy jersey that looks exactly the same. So you win some, you lose some, right? But yes, they will be in the Black Widow jerseys this weekend. Of course, a moment when you look at the auctions where you find it a bit unfortunate that the minimum bid is $250, because I think these might be some of the cheapest jerseys to get if you are a Knighthawks fan at some point this season. But that's going to do it for us today from Against the Boards. 7 o'clock start tomorrow for the Knighthawks at home. 7:05 start for the Amerks on the road in Utica. Have a good one. I've been Chamberlain Bauder.